Hello. So I have compiled some information. I was reading out of my favorite Paracelsus, An Introduction to Philosophical Medicine in the Era of Renaissance, about alchemy, and it sourced another book that I had, and then it sourced another book that I had, which is so exciting. And so I pulled all of them and tried to gather like a very tiny amount of information about alchemy. And so some of what I'm reading is direct quotes because I'm not that intelligent. I can try to put it in my own words, but I don't want to mess it up, and I just want the information from these books to be out there. So I am pulling from this Paracelsus book. I'm pulling from Lynn Thorndike's History of Magic and Experimental Science. The third book, 14th and 15th centuries. And I will be reading from book 4 of Meteorology by Aristotle quite directly, because that was the driest bit. So yeah, I'll just read to you what I wrote. I also was kind of thinking about something. Like, I don't think anybody wants to hear from like a young girl about this kind of like ancient knowledge. At least that's what I was thinking when I was watching somebody else. And I was like, well, that's me, and I understand that. And I just want you guys all to know, whether you need to know it or not, that on the inside, I'm like a haggardly old man. I'm on like my 15th or 16th life. And on the inside, I'm old. And I always felt that way. Like, I used to write a lot, and I was like, who the hell wants to read something from like some 20-something-year-old girl? So maybe that's all just in my head, but if anybody else just doesn't want to hear from me, I understand. Anyways, here is the information that I compiled about alchemy. So, within the study of alchemy, empiricism and experimentalism trumps intellect and Aristotelian philosophy. Alchemy is intrinsically tied to nature and is practiced more as a medicine than a systemized science. And like in medicine, empirical proof is necessary to demonstrate the effects upon the body of certain substances. There seems to be an implied truth within alchemy that the greater world corresponds to the lesser world and are reflections of each other. And according to Aristotle, alchemy deals with the particulars subject to sense perceptions as opposed to universals, which belong to the domain of reason. What matters in alchemy is the volatile substances, their protection against evaporation, and their retention in solid or fixed bodies. Within this volatile state, a substance is recognized for its qualities and virtues. Volatility of an object is important because generation can only come from putrefaction. In other words, when paralleled to medicine, we can talk about alchemy achieving its purpose when a substance is transmuted from its base or diseased form to a perfect and healthy form. In that way, imitating generation like in nature. More specifically, spontaneous generation. This likening to medicine is seen in the Philosopher's Stone, which in itself contains both a theriac and a poison. It is said that volatility conveys all motion and activity and form. Volatility is also known as a spiritual or airy and fiery principle. It is within that the Arabian physician and chemist Abu Bakr Muhammad ben Zechariah Razi, or Rhazes, Rhazes, maybe I'm saying that wrong. He calls air and fire the occult, and water and earth the manifest principles of a compound. Transmutation works in two parts, a digestive process and then a fixation process, which instills permanence by uniting the greater and the lesser worlds, or rather, uniting the earthly substance with a heavenly principle or spirit. Alongside volatility and retention of substances, certain conditions are necessary to achieve a new state. And so, to talk about these conditions, I then started pulling from Meteorology, book 4. And so the 4 elements, air, water, earth, and fire, have causes. Heat, cold, and wet and dry cause these elements. So they're like preeminent to elements. And so the causes of the elements are hot, cold, dry, and moist. Hot and cold are active. Dry and moist are passive. Hot and cold are active because in every case it conjoins or determines things of the same kind and of different kinds. It moistens, dries, hardens, and softens them. Moist and dry, however, whether together or in isolation, are subjects of that determination and of other affections enumerated. So, like, hot and cold act upon things, and moist and dry are the results of that action, thus making them passive. The operations of the active qualities and the forms taken by the passive are as follows. Firstly, unqualified natural becoming is change due to hot and cold being introduced to the matter underlying that given natural thing due to a certain ratio, and matter is the passive qualities moist and dry. The matter is the passive qualities moist and dry. When the hot and cold are masters of the matter, they generate a thing. If they are not, the object is imperfectly boiled or otherwise unconcocted. The strictest general opposite of unqualified becoming is putrefaction. All natural destruction is on the way to it, as are, for instance, growing old or growing dry. Yes, putrefaction or destruction is momentum towards growing old, dry. Putrescence is the end of all natural objects except for when destroyed by violence. Hence, things that putrefy begin by being moist and end by being dry, the passivities. For the moist and the dry were their matter, and the hot and cold throughout that object's lifespan was acting upon it. That among volatility. Everything except fire is liable to putrefy, for earth, water, and air putrefy, being all of them matter relatively to fire. Both heat and cold will be the causes of putrefaction alone. This explains why everything that putrefies grows drier and ends by becoming earth or dung. The subject's own heat departs and causes the natural moisture to evaporate with it, and then there is nothing left to draw in moisture, for it is a thing's peculiar heat that attracts moisture and draws it in. Putrefaction takes place less in cold than in hot seasons. What is frozen does not putrefy, for its cold is greater than the heat of the air, and so is not mastered, whereas what affects a thing does not master it. Nor does that which is boiling or hot putrefy, for the heat in the air being less than that in the object does not master it or set up any change. So too, anything that is flowing or in motion is less apt to putrefy than a thing at rest, for the motion set up by the heat is in the air is weaker than that pre-existing in the object, and so causes no change. And also, like amounts of things, like an entire sea does not putrefy, but if that sea was broken up into smaller bits, it is more likely to putrefy, or putrefies faster. And on putrefaction, according to Paracelsus, is like the mother of all transmutation. Just as digestion changes food, putrefaction changes the shape of objects, their nature, color, smell, properties. It will convert what is healthy into poison, but will just as easily reverse the process, for does not the gospel say this? except a grain of wheat fall into the ground and die, it abideth alone. But if it die, it bringeth forth much fruit. The power of putrefaction as the basic principle of generation is unlimited, as it can be employed in a laboratory. It opens to the expert Spagyricus the perspective of attainment to the highest and greatest magnal and divine mystery, the highest secret and miracle revealed to mortal man by God. Thus, mucilaginous matter prepared from the ash of a bird may be reconverted into the bird, and the artificial man, the homunculus, prepared in a test tube with heated up semen, which I have a video about a homunculus, how to make a homunculus earlier in my videos. You can see that. But yes, as always with Paracelsus, with alchemy, with all of this, the putrefaction is the essence of generation, and that's beautiful. Come on. The kinds of processes which hot and cold. Okay, back to Aristotle. That was a bit of Paracelsus. But the processes which the causes, hot and cold, set up in natural objects are as follows. Concoction is due to heat. Its species are ripening, boiling, and broiling. Inconcoction is due to cold, and its species are rawness, parboiling, and scorching. Concoction is a process in which the natural and proper heat of an object perfects the corresponding passive qualities, which are the proper matter of any given object. For when concoction has taken place, we say that a thing has been perfected and has come to be itself. Concoction ensues whenever the moisture is mastered. Inconcoction is an imperfect state due to lack of proper heat that is too cold. That of which the imperfect state is thus the corresponding passive qualities, which are the natural matter of anything. The Aristotelian theory of putrefaction of the semen is widely employed in generation. Quote, gold must putrefy so as to be reduced to its first matter, that it may become capable of germination, end quote. Generation being a kind of nutrition, and the conversion of a metal to gold is engendered by a sperm, an outward sulfur that generates an innermost sulfur from quicksilver. The innermost sulfur acting like the heart in the embryo, which according to Aristotle takes over from the sperm and governs the development of all organs and members. There was mention of this precious new pearl, this like alchemical text. The author of the exposition for and against alchemy, the precious new pearl, or Petriosa Margarita Novella, Petrus Bonus or Pietro Buono, expressly recognizes that Aristotle, in the fourth book of meteorology, denied the truth of alchemy and called it sophistical and fantastic. Now, I only read a section of meteorology. You go read that. You go do that if you want to. The fourth book also is now regarded as, this fourth book in meteorology is now regarded as a later addition to the text of meteorology, and already in Pietro's time, it was correctly ascribed to some by Avicenna. Pietro himself does not believe that the passage can be by Avicenna, and in another alchemical work cites the text as Aristotle's. Pietro therefore confines himself to answering as best as he can that he regards as Aristotle's 5 arguments against alchemy and meteorology, and to suggesting that this denial of transmutation was made in Aristotle's youth, and that he learned better in his later years, as is shown by his affirmation of transmutation in alchemy, of its validity in the Secret of Secrets addressed to Alexander the Great. So, yes, Aristotle believes. And just as a side note on this New Pearl text by Pietro Buono, He declares that the whole operation of alchemical art can be learned and taught in one day, nay, in a single hour, by the intelligent or well-informed person, without investigation and specialized knowledge. However, despite of this, Pietro was ready to admit the extreme difficulty of alchemy, at first seeming easy to him. Then doubts and difficulties arise, and the further the study, the more questions arise. And in the text, no forthright answer of transmutation is stated. Okay, now to discuss heat and fermentation. In the hatching of an egg, heat plays but an auxiliary role. In the same way, it is not the fierce heat of the furnace which completes the work so quickly, but the specific factor of the stone. So we're talking about the philosopher's stone. Now, transmutation is a process of digestion in which the action of a ferment is paramount. If, by definition, ferment is the agent which converts matter into its own substance, the stone is the leaven of all other metals and changes them into its own nature. The stone itself is a metallic substance, for, like the metals, it is generated from sulfur and mercury, and as ordinary leaven receives its fermenting power through heat, the stone is rendered capable of fermenting, converting, and altering metals by means of a certain digestive heat, which brings out the potential and latent properties. Medieval alchemists explains transmutation in the Aristotelian terms of form and matter. More on that to come. The quinta essentia is an incorruptible substance that is heaven manifest on earth. So all the philosopher's stone and the quinta essentia are like the products of alchemy, in which what that is being strived for. And the quinta essentia is this tincture that is the essential generating principle and is derived from the quality and form, or sulfur. Quality, form, sulfur. Quicksilver being quantity or matter. It is in the tincture that is the essential generating principle and is derived from the quality and form, or sulfur. Quicksilver being the quantity or matter. Supposedly Arnold of Villanova was in possession of this tincture or elixir. Its virtues surpasses all professional medicines in curing all diseases. Supposedly, it preserves health, strengthens vitality, rejuvenates and expels all diseases, staves off poison from the heart, moistens the arteries, dissolves deposits in the lungs, fills defects caused by ulcerations, purifies blood and spirit. John D. Rupiskisa, from middle 14th century, implores God not to let this prescription for the quinta essentia fall into the wrong hands, which then could be profited off of and not shared with those in need. The first secret of this tincture is that man, by his domination or magisterium over the virtue conferred by God upon nature, can cure the infirmities of old age and restore youth, as it was stated. It is in the prevention of putrefaction and preserves without diminishing the substance of a body. So it is an incorruptible, non-putrefying state, this tincture. There can be no question of conferring immortality, which God had refused to Adam even within the confines of paradise. Only rejuvenation and preservation until the appointed day of death can be attempted. By contrast, of the four elements, of which heat and cold are the causes of the quinta essentia, as it is for all other elements, can confer any quality according to what is required at the moment. So quinta essentia changes form. in that way to what is needed. It is thus the root of life, created by God. It is contained in nature as it is a part of heaven, and there is that relationship of correspondence between the higher and lesser worlds. So yes, it is contained in nature, must be extracted from the body of created nature by human artifice, and is called firewater, soul, or spirit of wine, or water of life. It is a water, yet unlike elementary water, it is combustible. It is an air, yet unlike elementary air, it is not warm and moist, and would not, like the latter, give rise to spontaneous generation of insects. It is therefore incorruptible, as long as evaporation is avoided. Its extreme sharpness and heat prevent it from being dry and cold like a completely putrefied object. That it is finally not dry and warm like fire is shown in the fact that, though hot in itself, it cools and cures inflammatory disease. That it confers incorruptibility is shown by the preservation of animal flesh in it. The quinta essentia is the human heaven which God created for the preservation of the 4 elemental qualities in the human body, just as he created heaven for the preservation of the universe. Every object in nature contains its incorruptible quinta essentia. In the human form, it is blood. A perfect work of nature contains it, and with it the marvelous virtue of our starry heaven. It is therefore able to work the highest curative miracles. The quinta essentia can be extracted from blood and flesh by slow digestion with salt and distillation. The quinta essentia can be prepared from medicinal herbs and added to classical quinta essentia, that is, produced in the distillation of wine or, for example, alcohol. The action of such mixtures will vary according to the elementary qualities of the herbs used. These qualities and grades of qualities are those taught by Galen. Herb extracts, however, only supplement the elaborate prescriptions for minerals extracts, notably from antimony, sulfur, orpiment, iron, copper, silver, mercury, vitriol, marcasites, etc. It is to these, and notably to the preparation of antimony, that the most miraculous effects are ascribed. So, quinta essentia can be extracted from human form. How the philosopher's stone is necessarily made, I'm not quite sure, but I believe it works to prepare quinta essentia in some way. Maybe I'm wrong. However, okay, so in all of this alchemical text, it is, I just want to offer up an idea here. These physicians fully believed and practiced and tried to distill their own quinta essentia, or tried to transmute these objects to create the philosopher's stone. Clearly, so what if Carl Jung, okay, so like Darwin had like ties to the government, and his theory was propped up as truth to guide people in a certain way that the government wanted them to think. Could possibly Carl Jung be in the same vein, in the sense misguiding people to believing alchemy was solely, I mean, people don't even think that alchemy is like a real elemental transmutational process. People think alchemy is solely Carl Jung's interpretation of it in a personalized sense, not at all regarding anything of the higher or lesser world correspondences. Could it possibly be that he moved a lot of people to not try to pursue some sort of quinta essentia extraction. I don't know. I just like to ask the questions. So there is just a bit of an elementary introduction to alchemy from these 3 specific texts, and there's so much more, and I barely even talked about anything at all. So thank you all for listening to this, and I hope you whatever.